In practice, the movie doesn't always sell urgency. I rarely felt the threat had weight. The danger exists, the villains are a problem, but the film's tone and speed often prevent dread from building. Spectacle is everywhere, but suspense is limited. A lot of the big set pieces look amazing, yet don't always feel like they matter beyond being the next awesome sequence. This is also where the manufactured feeling can creep in. Certain beats hit like they were engineered to spark fan attachment, iconic poses, perfect one-liners, designed to be quoted moments, rather than unfolding naturally from character and story. It's entertaining, sure, but sometimes you can see the marketing blueprint under the paint. When that happens, the movie starts to resemble a glossy franchise trailer that happens to be feature-length. Comedy and side elements. The comedy is a strong supporting pillar. It's not non-stop brilliance, but it's consistently playful. The film uses a mix of character humor, quick reactions, and exaggerated visual comedy that fits the heightened style. Also, shout out to the little non-human companions/creature elements, including that tiger and bird energy. They bring charm and texture, and honestly, I wouldn't mind more of them if this world expands. The big picture, why it still works. Here's the thing, even with the pacing issues and the occasional brand-first vibe, I still had a good time. It's bright. It's funny. It's stylish. It's full of energy. And when it's firing on all cylinders, music plus action plus humor plus visual flair, it's genuinely thrilling. Is it a perfectly told story? No. Is it emotionally rich? Not consistently. Does it sometimes feel like it's afraid to take messy, risky turns? Yeah. But as an animated spectacle with a unique hook, it's hard not to appreciate the ambition and the sheer entertainment value. Ending, hopeful, sequel talk. If the studio really is exploring more projects in this world, sequels, a series, maybe even something stage-related, that honestly makes sense. This setting feels built for expansion, and the concept is strong enough to support more focused storytelling in follow-ups. What I want most, if they continue, is simply this: give the characters room to breathe. Let the stakes bite. Let the relationships deepen. Keep the style and the music, but trust the audience enough to slow down and make the emotional moments stick. Because if they can match this movie's energy with stronger narrative weight, that's when K-pop Demon Hunters could become more than a flashy good time. It could become something people genuinely champion for years. As it stands, it's a vibrant, action-packed ride, sometimes chaotic, sometimes shallow, frequently charming, and absolutely worth a watch if you're in the mood for color, comedy, and music that hits harder than expected. OUTRO, alright, did this one work for you? Were you hooked by the songs and visuals, or did the pacing throw you off? And if they make more, what would you want to see next? A sequel, a series, or a full musical? I have to give the filmmakers credit for a smart move. Bringing in Twice is a built-in magnet for attention, and it practically guarantees a solid chunk of the fanbase will show up. That said, K-pop Demon Hunters still lands as one of the more intriguing animated concepts of 2025, even if the massive buzz around it makes it feel slightly more event than the movie itself always earns. Where it really wins is the presentation. The animation is bold, polished, and consistently impressive, and the story is straightforward in a satisfying way. 3 wildly successful young K-pop stars aren't just icons on stage, they're also demon hunters. Their fame becomes a battleground when demons try to infiltrate and dominate the pop world for revenge. Amid the chaos, the film slips in a surprisingly sweet romance. One demon develops feelings for a hunter who's carrying her own complicated secret. She's only half human. It's a classic enemy meets vulnerability thread, and it works better than it has any right to. The soundtrack also deserves a shout-out. A few tracks are genuinely catchy, and the movie uses music as more than background noise, it's part of the momentum. The characters are easy to root for, the humor mostly lands, and the whole thing feels tuned to the vibe of today's generation in a way that's a little strange to describe, but hard to deny once you're watching it. I'd absolutely return to this world, and if a sequel happens, I'm in. I've been deep into K-dramas for nearly 8 years, and I've sampled series from all over: Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, China, Taiwan, you name it. But for me, Korea remains on another level because so many productions manage to be entertaining while still carrying some emotional insight or life lesson. They're also great at mixing genres without it feeling messy. If you're after stories that are fun, uplifting, and meaningful in a similar lane, Netflix is loaded with strong K-drama options, honestly, more than any platform outside of Viki. That's partly why this movie surprised me. I almost skipped it, but a coworker came in the next day raving about how much he enjoyed it, so I gave it a shot. And I'm glad I did. The movie takes the emotional punch and genre-blending energy you'd expect from K-dramas and combines it with the bright, addictive pulse of K-pop. The result is a fast, magical ride that works for kids, teens, and adults alike. Even better, it carries a message that hits hard without getting preachy. Sometimes the demons we fight aren't monsters out in the world, they're the fears and lies we replay in our own heads. Your mind can be loud, but that doesn't make it truthful. Too many people let that inner noise define them, and the film gently pushes back against that idea. Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, best friends and members of Korea's hottest girl group, balance fame with protecting people from supernatural threats. But Rumi is carrying something heavy. She's part demon, and she hides it because she's terrified it will change how everyone sees her. It's painfully relatable. How many people spend years covering up parts of themselves, convinced they'll be rejected if they're fully known? The film also points out something important: guilt and shame don't just appear, they're taught, absorbed, and reinforced. Then come the Saja Boys, a flashy new boy group with a dark secret. They're tied to GWMA, a powerful demon aiming to claim souls, and their leader Jinwoo has the whole Grim Reaper vibe down: dark coats, black hats, the works. If you've watched enough K-dramas, you recognize the symbolism instantly. In Korean lore, Grim Reapers guide souls across, and depending on the story, they can be protectors, or something much more sinister. The movie plays with that ambiguity in a fun way. Jinwoo's plan is cruelly personal. Once he learns Rumi's secret, he uses it to get close, hoping to manipulate her and end his own suffering. For a moment, it almost succeeds, because it forces Rumi to confront the thing she's been hiding from her whole life. But that's where the heart of the movie really lives, her realization that she was never wrong to begin with. That acceptance, of identity, of complexity, of the parts you've been trained to fear, is the film's real victory, and it's a message worth hearing at any age. And the finale? It's powerful. The final song and the way the scene is staged feel genuinely uplifting, the kind of moment that sticks in your chest after the credits roll. Only a small number of films manage to hit both heart and spirit like that, and I honestly can't think of many animated movies that pull it off this confidently. I went into K-pop Demon Hunters expecting to bounce off it. When I first saw the title during the trailer phase, I brushed it off. Then when it landed on Netflix in June, I remember thinking, I don't follow K-pop, probably not for me, and I didn't even bother watching the trailer. Fast forward to late August, it got a limited theatrical run for a single weekend, and somehow it was packed. That alone made me curious. Then I kept seeing people talk about the songs charting, with one track sitting at the very top for what felt like forever. At that point I finally hit play, and yeah, if you've been sleeping on this movie like I did, fix that immediately. It has a real shot at becoming one of the year's standout animated films. The ending, and why people are tearing up, without giving away too much, the climax hit surprisingly hard. As the crowd starts breaking free from GWMA's grip, something powerful happens. People stop being passive spectators and actually join the fight. Their voices become fuel for Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, and the whole sequence turns into this emotional, communal, we're in this together moment. It's the kind of finale that sneaks up on you. One minute you're enjoying the spectacle, the next you're thinking, wait, why am I getting emotional right now? honestly. I get why some viewers have needed tissues. Visuals, a feast. The animation is straight up gorgeous. If you enjoyed the energy and style of the Spider-Verse films, there's a good chance this will land for you too. The colors pop, the motion feels alive, and the world building is vibrant in a way that's hard not to admire. Watch it at night with the lights off if you can. This movie glows. And credit where it's due, Maggie Kong and Chris Applehands, and the whole team, deserve major praise for crafting something that feels bold, modern, and visually confident. It's the kind of animated spectacle that makes you think certain studios should be taking notes. Sound, music, and why it works even if you're not into K-pop. Here's the wild part: even if you're not a K-pop listener, the audio design and music can still hook you. The sound is big, cinematic, and clean. Action beats hit harder because the music is doing real storytelling work, not just filling space. And the soundtrack? It's stacked. While I was writing this, I noticed the soundtrack sitting at number 1, and the track, Golden, taking the top spot too. That tracks, because these songs aren't just good for an animated movie, they're legitimately catchy. Kids are going to replay them non-stop, and adults are going to pretend they aren't also humming along. I haven't felt a soundtrack this packed with replay-worthy tracks since The Greatest Showman. Different vibe, sure, but the same, how are there this many hits, feeling. Story and pacing, no wasted time. The film doesn't overstay its welcome, around 84 minutes, and it uses that runtime well. It sets up what you need quickly, then it's off and running. Once it hits the gas, it doesn't really pause, which makes it feel tight and energetic. The humor lands more often than not, and the movie balances fun, intensity, and style without getting bogged down. I also like the way it blends a sort of dramatic, larger-than-life mythic vibe with present-day pop culture. The tone is playful but still committed, which is harder to pull off than it looks. Final thoughts: this movie surprised me in the best way. It's stylish, emotional, loud, sincere, and genuinely entertaining. If you love K-pop, you'll probably treat it like an event. If you don't, there's still a strong chance it wins you over through the animation, action, and momentum alone. It also proves something important: you can make a crowd-pleasing movie that still carries a message and a sense of heart, and people are clearly hungry for that right now. I already know I'll be revisiting this one, and yes, replaying the songs too. Watch it for a fun 90 minutes, and don't be surprised if it turns into multiple rewatches. First impressions: on a purely technical level, it's hard to nitpick. The animation has that high energy, punchy movement you'd associate with Dragon Ball style action, mixed with glossy, stylized visuals that remind me of the Spider-Verse approach. It's not really my preferred anime flavor, but I can easily see why a lot of viewers would be into it. The bigger problem: who is this for? Content-wise, I'm much less forgiving, mainly because I kept asking myself, what audience is this aiming at? Hopefully not kids. If it's meant for viewers who are still forming their taste and values, teens or young adults, then the movie's choices feel questionable. Coming of age is a sensitive phase. You can learn at any age, sure, but those years shape what you admire and what you normalize. This film throws a lot into that mix: non-stop attention-grabbing imagery, a soundtrack that often feels loud and aggressively manufactured rather than genuinely musical, and exaggerated, dumbed-down fan caricature, the very current, and very dubious, normalization of luxury as default cool, constant celebration of shallow wins, trivial flexes, and surface-level identity. To me, it's the kind of movie that can be more damaging to an unpolished mind than a horror film, because it doesn't scare you. It trains you. It's an assembly line of stimulation, fast, neon, restless, hypercolorful, and ultimately designed to keep the brain buzzing while slowly sanding down good taste. Vibe check: K-pop alienation, K-pop Demon Hunters, is about as distancing as K-pop itself can feel to outsiders, ultra-polished performers who come off like alien human hybrids, characters with the look and energy of 14-year-old bodies, some token, gay best friend vibes, and music that feels far away from the creative grit you'd expect from real musicians. It's glossy. It's addictive. It's also kind of hollow. Overall verdict: all that said, this is still, in many ways, a solid animated movie. The animation is strong, and the music is undeniably catchy, especially in how it symbolizes the blend of Asian and Western influences running through the whole project. But the movie doesn't fully stick the landing because it's held back by weak plot construction and thin character writing. It honestly feels like a chunk of runtime got chopped, and the story is missing connective tissue. Breakdown: direction, pretty good on the big picture level. The film is basically an animated musical filtered through K-pop culture, sprinkled with demon-hunting anime flavor, and borrowing the family-friendly musical DNA of movies like Frozen. On the smaller, scene-by-scene level, the direction is competent. It gives certain moments personality and helps you understand the main cast, just not in a deep way. The storytelling style is unusual, too. It's almost like the movie skips the setup and wrap-up and drops you into something that feels like the end of a journey, then throws in a fresh conflict. Because of that, the first half feels rushed, like it expects you to already know the lore and backstories. The second half settles into a more familiar animated movie rhythm. Story: decent, with big caveats. The core idea is interesting. Demon hunters evolving across different music eras is a cool hook. But the lead's personal struggle feels a bit too close to the emotional template we've seen in Frozen and similar movies. The biggest issue is structure. By cutting or skipping major exposition, the first 30 to 40 minutes can feel confusing, awkward, or even a little cringe. Then the final hour becomes more traditionally paced and easier to follow. It also feels obvious that scenes were removed. The story comes across rushed and slightly incomplete, something that can happen in animation, but it's still noticeable here. Character-wise, the lead and the main Saja boy get the most depth, even if the lead's arc feels familiar. The rest of the cast barely gets room to breathe, which makes them feel forgettable. It really seems like character development got trimmed to keep the runtime tighter. Screenplay: decent. The dialogue can be rough early on, some lines land awkwardly in that first act, but it smooths out over time. Overall, it's pretty much what you'd expect from a family-oriented animated film. The humor follows a similar pattern. The beginning is shaky, but there are still a few memorable moments. Symbolism and themes are familiar. A lot of it echoes other animated musicals and demon-hunting franchises, and even borrows the kind of family fantasy, symbolic language you'd associate with movies like Frozen. The foreshadowing is standard, serviceable, and predictable in the way these movies often are. Acting: pretty good, so far. Arden Cho, pretty good to good, strong lead performance, though the character feels split since a different performer handles the singing. On Hyoseop, decent to pretty good, good chemistry with Cho, and he sells his character's conflict well, again with that two-performer split between acting and singing. Mei Hong, your text cuts off here. If you want, I can rewrite the rest in the same style once you paste the remaining lines. K-pop Demon Hunters, review script, rewritten. I finally checked out K-pop Demon Hunters, and visually, wow! It's a gorgeous movie, stylish, energetic, and surprisingly sweet in the message it's trying to deliver. Even if you're not deep into K-pop culture, the film makes it very clear what it wants to celebrate: music, identity, community, and holding on to what's inside you, not just what people see on the surface. At its core, it's a wild and fun premise. 3 K-pop superstars who also double as demon hunters are preparing to lock away the demon world for good using a new song. But then a rival boy group shows up, and here's the twist: they're not just competition, they're demons, and they're here to steal attention, disrupt the balance, and throw everything off course. My vibe going in: important context. I'll be honest, I'm not really a trend chaser. I'm the type who's usually late to popular stuff, and I'm more of an old-school media/music person. But I still try things even if they're not targeted at me, because sometimes the hype is earned. This movie is clearly built to ride a wave: K-pop popularity, global audience appeal, and that Netflix big event energy. And while I can understand why people are loving it, I also get that, personally, this might just be one of those movies that isn't made for me. That said, I can still judge what it does well, and it does a lot well. Performances, voice cast, the cast is solid overall, though the movie often narrows its attention so much that some actors don't get much space to shine. Arden Cho, pretty good, strong presence, but it feels like the story keeps the spotlight tight, and the character doesn't get as much depth as you'd hope. Also, the character feels split a bit since there's a separate singing voice. Ji-young-yu, pretty good, similar situation, good delivery, but the movie doesn't give her enough moments to fully round out the character, and again the two-part performance, speaking versus singing, stands out. Yeonjim Kim, pretty good, she brings warmth as the motherly figure, but her screen time is limited, so she doesn't leave as big an impression as she could have. Daniel Dae Kim, decent to pretty good, feels more like a respectful cameo, nice to see, but not a major presence. Ken Jeong, pretty good to good, easily one of the most memorable voices here. He uses comedic instincts well, and it makes the character pop. Also arguably the strongest vocal performance. Lee Byung-hun, decent, he plays the stoic role fine, but the character is written in a way that doesn't give him much to do. Nothing bad, just not a standout. Rest of the cast, pretty good, the background voice acting is exactly what you'd expect for quality animation. And the singing across the board is strong, songs land well and feel polished. Music, the big strength, the best thing about this film is the music. No question. Soundtrack, very good, the songs are catchy, and more importantly, they actually feel like they belong in the story instead of being random music breaks. They help carry emotion and momentum. My top 3 tracks were, What It Sounds Like, Your Idol, and Golden. Score, good, a lot of it works as variations/interpolations of the main musical material, and I enjoyed that approach. It keeps everything cohesive. Honestly, it's the kind of movie where it's easy to get pulled into the beats and hooks, even when the plot is moving fast, you might find yourself just vibing and singing along. Technical side animation, great, the visual style feels heavily influenced by Asian animation traditions, and it fits the movie's identity. It looks expressive, symbolic, and full of personality. Editing, good, the cuts give it that modern animated rhythm, jumping between cute character beats and big action moments in a way that feels very anime-adjacent, but still family-friendly. Sound, good, the audio mix gives the movie punch. The songs hit with the pop energy they need, and the action has impact too. Tone, it's strongly inspired by Asian animation vibes, but it still carries some of that Hollywood family animation flavor. It's a blend. Story, pacing, and the climax. This is where my main issue shows up, pacing, it's fast, like really fast. That's normal for animated films, but here it sometimes feels like chunks of story were trimmed to hit runtime. There were moments where I had to catch up, and it was easier to just fall back into the music rather than fully track every plot beat. But climax, this part is executed really well. It's the true high point of the film and the moment where everything clicks emotionally and visually. The ending stretch is where the movie becomes worth it, especially because it delivers my favorite song, What It Sounds Like. Final thoughts: if you're the target audience, or you enjoy pop music animation with big style, I completely understand why people are hyped. The animation is excellent, the soundtrack is a genuine highlight, and the film's message about identity and culture lands in a heartfelt way. For me personally, the plot, speed and trend movie feel kept me a little outside of it. But even with that, I can still say, as a musical experience and visual showcase, it's impressive, and as a kids and kids at heart type of movie, it's going to hit for a lot of people. If you want something beautiful to look at, fun to listen to, and easy to get swept up in, this one delivers. To me, the big issue is that the movie feels like it's chasing a moment more than it's honoring where the culture it's borrowing from actually comes from. It comes off a little like it's built for Western fascination with the East, and that vibe never really clicked with me. And honestly, part of this is just me. I'm an old head. I don't have that built-in hype for K-pop, and I'm not someone who wants my media to lean heavily on idol-style aesthetics or constant, look how attractive everyone is, energy. That kind of overexpressive cultural packaging doesn't hook me. I'm way more interested in story, character, and atmosphere. Though I'll admit, I do enjoy demon hunting stuff, which probably means I'm also guilty of tapping into trends, because yeah, that scratches the same itch as the whole Demon Slayer type wave. So to be clear, this movie just isn't aimed at me. And that's fine. It's clearly hitting for a lot of people. People are loving the characters, the songs, the vibe, the cultural flavor. That's cool to see. I'm just not at that party. Still, I've got thoughts, and here's what worked and what didn't for me. I wanted more character focus, especially for the three leads. My biggest story complaint is that the movie doesn't spend enough meaningful time with the three main girls. It feels like the script is going for a three distinct personalities setup, almost like a Powerpuff Girls-style trio, but it doesn't commit to letting them shine. They're there, and they're defined in broad strokes, but they often get pushed aside by the main emotional arc, the romance, the personal journey, the central conflict. Because of that, the trio feels less important than they should, and less fun than they could be. And what's frustrating is that even the trope roles they're given start to blur. Sometimes they act too similarly, or the movie breaks their assigned personalities without replacing that with deeper characterization. If you're not going to fully use the archetypes, then why lean on them in the first place? And I don't think it's a runtime problem. If anything, the movie felt like it dragged a bit toward the end for me, so it's not that there wasn't time. It's more about where the focus went. I'd rather spend extra minutes with the characters being characters, because that's what makes the stakes land when the plot starts escalating. It improved as it went, but the finale fumbled the momentum even with those issues. I'll give the movie credit, it got better the longer I watched it. The first half, for me, was pretty standard and occasionally dull, lots of familiar beats, some predictable setup, not a ton that grabbed me. But as it moves toward the emotional and thematic core, I started liking it more. The themes become clearer and stronger. I really like the idea of trauma and sin being treated as something physical, something that grows, follows you, eats away at you, and becomes harder to hide the longer you keep it inside. That metaphor works. The movie's best moments are when it leans into how difficult it is to talk about pain, how isolating it can be, and how it can literally consume you if you refuse to face it. The problem is the climax doesn't give that foundation room to breathe. It feels rushed. Characters swing back and forth too quickly, like the script keeps flipping them into new emotional settings without properly earning the transitions. When a movie has a solid base, a messy finale is extra frustrating because you can see the stronger version of it underneath. The style, humor, and culture references didn't land for me tone-wise. I wasn't on the same wavelength as the movie. A lot of the cultural nods felt more like decoration than identity, like they were added as flavor instead of being fully integrated into the story's heart. The humor was also very mixed for me. Some jokes hit, but a lot of it felt hyper-random and internet-clipped, like it was designed to become reaction gifs or quick TikTok moments rather than comedy that builds naturally from character. That said, the cat absolutely got me. The cat is genuinely funny. And a handful of bits worked. But overall, the comedic rhythm didn't match what I enjoy. Animation-wise, I had similar mixed feelings. It often feels like a chain of stylish music video segments, and while that can be fun, what's happening on screen isn't always that interesting. There's a lot of dancing, but for me dancing is way more impressive in real life because you feel the human skill and effort. In animation, characters can just do it, so unless the choreography is really creative or the storytelling is strong, it doesn't wow me the same way. And yeah, like so many animated movies right now, it feels like it's trying to borrow the Spider-Verse, 2018, playbook. But it doesn't fully understand why that approach worked. The motion feels inconsistent, sometimes choppy, sometimes smooth, and I couldn't find a reason for when it switches. The character designs are decent, but something about the look still reads a bit flat to me, hard to explain, but it didn't come together as a cohesive style in my eyes. The plot rules felt thin, then suddenly got way bigger. Another issue, the world building starts simple and then balloons out in a way that felt messy. The setup is, they're demon hunters, and they can seal the demon world through song. Cool. I can accept that. It's a musical, leaning into song-based magic is a great fit. But once the second half kicks in, the story throws in more and more concepts and upgrades, and it starts feeling scattered. The Tsin idea as a seal is actually really cool, and I expected the story to explore that more directly, especially since it's a musical, where temptation, confession, performance, image, and vulnerability could all tie into that theme beautifully. Instead, it sometimes swerves into stuff like laser weapons and big escalation beats that don't feel organically connected to the initial rules. It happens multiple times where I'm like, wait, are we doing this kind of movie now? It made the second half feel less focused even when the themes were getting stronger. The music just isn't my taste, and that's a me thing. And finally, the music. This is purely subjective, but the soundtrack style didn't really speak to me. I think I liked about 2 songs, but not in a way where I'd go listen to them on my own time. The club pop energy just isn't my lane. That said, the soundtrack clearly has an audience and seems to be doing great. So I'm not saying it's bad, it's just not for me. This is one of those moments where my opinion is more about personal taste than objective quality. Final thoughts. So yeah, I can see why people are into this movie, and I'm glad it's bringing people joy. It has ideas I respect, and it genuinely improved as it went. But the tone, the humor, the style choices, and the way the plot expands didn't click with me, plus I wish the 3 main girls got more meaningful focus. If you're already into the music, the aesthetic, and the whole vibe, you'll probably have a great time. I just wasn't the target audience. K-pop Demon Hunters, review script, original. Going into K-pop Demon Hunters, I honestly didn't expect to care much. I've heard people hype it up like crazy, and on top of that, I'm not exactly a modern pop music person, so my expectations were cautious. But weirdly enough, the movie pulled me in. Not just with the style and the energy, but with how emotionally involved I ended up getting. Let's start with what immediately works. The presentation is insane. The animation is sharp, bold, and hyper-stylized in a way that feels contemporary without being messy. If you like that kinetic, graphic novel meets cinema vibe, something that kind of scratches the same itch as the Spider-Verse approach, this is going to hit. The action scenes especially feel like they were ripped straight out of flashy manga panels, exaggerated, punchy, and super satisfying to watch. And yes, the character designs are excellent. The demons look genuinely cool, distinct and memorable, which isn't easy when the whole yokai/demon pool has been used 1,000 times already. There's a real sense of visual personality here. Also, quick appreciation moment, the cat and the pigeon completely stole my heart. They're the kind of side details that add charm without overstaying their welcome. Now the music. This is the part where I surprised myself. I expected the songs to be generic, overproduced noise, and while there is some auto-tune that I personally found distracting at first, I eventually got over it. Because a lot of these numbers are actually catchy. Not just background noise, songs that match the film's energy and, importantly, serve the characters. Some tracks are more blunt than others. Sure, the more in-your-face numbers like Takedown won't be everyone's thing, but the film deserves credit for not treating the musical side like a throwaway gimmick. What I appreciated even more is that the movie doesn't rely entirely on spectacle. Early on, it looks like it might be a shallow brand movie, flashy concept, cookie-cutter personalities, and a very obvious message. For a moment, the main group even feels like they're going to be interchangeable archetypes, the kind of lineup you've seen a million times in pop group fiction. But then the story reveals a key detail about the lead pretty early, around that first chunk of the film, and from there it gets more dramatic than I expected. The stakes rise, the emotional beats start landing, and the characters gradually become more than just the assigned personality. Each member of the group actually has their own identity and their own small journey, and that ties into the core theme, own what you are instead of hiding it. The lead's arc is clearly the heart of the movie, but the other members aren't treated like filler, which I really respected. Even the supporting cast is handled well, especially since there's a villain dynamic that's not just evil for evil's sake. There's a romantic angle woven in too, and surprisingly, it's not dull. The voice acting across the board is strong and helps sell the emotions when the movie decides to get serious. That said, this film isn't flawless. For me, the biggest story issue is that it still leans on familiar plot machinery. The liar revealed situation shows up, and even though it briefly feels like the movie might twist it into something smarter, it ultimately plays out in a pretty predictable way. The final stretch does a decent job recovering, and there are moments in the last act that almost push it into great territory, but it doesn't fully get there for me. And this is where my bigger overall complaint comes in: the movie's identity feels confused. Because on one hand, it's clearly a solid kids/teen animated film. It's energetic, uplifting, and has a very direct moral about teamwork, honesty, and facing darkness together. Honestly, it's the kind of movie that would be great for teenage girls, especially in the character-building sense: friendship, self-worth, confidence, sticking together, fighting evil, all of that. But on the other hand, it also seems to want to be more than that. It sort of presents itself like it's trying to hit multiple audiences at once: kids, K-pop fans, anime/manga lovers, maybe even older animation fans who want something more layered. And that, trying to be everything, creates this feeling that it doesn't fully commit to one clear lane. Like, who is the primary audience here? It's not a deal-breaker, but you can feel that push and pull throughout the movie. I also have a more personal nitpick with the music structure: there isn't really a strong rise and fall to the soundtrack for me. Instead of one moment that absolutely burns into your memory, it can blur together a little. Nothing is bad, it just doesn't always stick the landing the way it wants to. That might be totally subjective, but it affected how memorable the musical side was for me. So where do I land overall? K-pop Demon Hunters is still a strong watch. The concept is genuinely fun, the animation is outstanding, the action is stylish, and the characters ended up being far more compelling than I expected. Even as someone outside the target demographic, adult male, not a pop fan, I can admit the filmmakers did a really good job making this world feel exciting and emotionally engaging. It's not perfect, and the story could have used a bit more polishing and a clearer sense of who it's speaking to. But even with that, it's one of the more impressive animated originals in recent memory. And honestly, it's the kind of movie that makes you wish certain bigger studios were taking more swings like this. Final verdict: a really enjoyable, visually stunning film that falls just short of being an all-time favorite, but still absolutely worth watching. Script, rewritten movie review: I went into Netflix's K-pop Demon Hunters with low expectations. Honestly, the title alone made it sound like a loud gimmick. But I'll admit it, this movie surprised me. On a craft level, it's ridiculously polished. The animation is gorgeous, mixing 2D charm with 3D depth in a way that feels smooth instead of messy. The world has personality, the action scenes are clean and exciting, and the main trio, Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, are genuinely fun to watch. And yes, the K-pop music absolutely hits. The film knows how to stage a performance, and it delivers that pop star energy with confidence. That said, the shine doesn't hide everything. Under the glitter, the story plays it safe. Very safe. The plot rarely surprises, the emotional beats don't land as hard as they should, and by the time the final act rolls around, it feels like the movie suddenly remembers it has to end. The last stretch moves too fast, like key scenes were trimmed for time. Honestly, this could have used another 10 minutes, just enough breathing room to deepen the characters and let the ending feel earned. It also leaves a handful of story threads hanging, the kind that don't feel like mystery, but more like a sequel being quietly set up. And that connects to my biggest issue: this movie feels like it was engineered to impress, not to connect. The concept is gold: an idol group living two lives, performing by day and hunting demons by night. It's the perfect setup for real themes: pressure, identity, perfection, sacrifice, the mask versus the person underneath. The movie flirts with all of that, but never commits. The characters each get a vibe, not a full arc. The rival villains, the Saja boys, look cool, but they're more aesthetic than threat. Conflicts show up and then get softened or skipped. Nothing really stings. Nothing really breaks. It's strange, because the film is constantly loud, big visuals, big fights, big performances, yet emotionally, it often feels distant. Like it's performing at you instead of pulling you in. But then there's one moment where everything changes. Midway through, there's a song, Free, and it plays almost like a pause button on the movie's noise. The pacing calms down. The tone drops its armor. For a short stretch, the film stops posing and allows something honest to peek through. The performance feels less like choreography and more like confession, like someone involved in the project remembered what it's like to be trapped under expectations. And that's the irony: in a movie overflowing with spectacle, the part that sticks is the quietest emotional crack in the glass. That's also why the rest of the film can feel frustrating. Because the ingredients are all there: style, music, action, a strong central idea, and yet it rarely risks being messy or vulnerable. It decorates. It dazzles. It dances. But it doesn't dig deep. So if you watched it and felt oddly empty, you're not crazy. There isn't much weight to hold on to, except that one song. Free feels like a spark that slipped out of a tightly controlled machine. And I'll give the movie this: even a calculated project can accidentally let something real escape. K-pop Demon Hunters isn't terrible. It's entertaining, it's beautiful to look at, and it's packed with pop-fueled momentum. But emotionally? It's mostly glossy surface. A fun ride, just not a cut-deep one. Still, that one moment lingers. And maybe that's the proof that something stronger could be hiding in this world, if the next one dares to actually bleed a little. Script, rewritten movie review: there's something special about catching a moment that feels real, unpolished, unapproved, and completely unmanufactured, a line, a lyric, a note that was not filtered through 5 marketing departments. And that is what you caught. That one moment of truth. And honestly, K-pop Demon Hunters has a few of those moments, even while being loud, flashy, and proudly over the top. Because yes, this movie delivers exactly what the title suggests: K-pop energy smashed together with demon-slaying chaos, wrapped in a supernatural, stylish package. And the biggest reason it works? The visuals. The animation is an absolute flex, bright, kinetic, and constantly in motion. Every scene feels like it's bursting with color and attitude, and the action sequences have this slick rhythm that makes the fights feel like choreography. If I had to compare the look to something, it gave me that Spider-Verse kind of vibe at times: bold styling, expressive character movement, and a mix of 3D with a handcrafted, almost 2D-like flair. On top of that, some of the facial expressions and exaggerated reactions feel straight out of anime or manga, which adds a lot of charm. Now, let's talk about the music, because this film absolutely knows what it's doing with its songs. The tracks are placed smartly to boost key scenes and keep the momentum high. But fair warning, some of them are dangerously catchy. Like, Stuck in Your Head for Days, catchy. Earworms with a Mission. Annoying? Sometimes. Effective? Completely. Under all the pop gloss, there's also a pretty solid demon hunting story tucked inside. It does borrow a few familiar beats, and I won't pretend I didn't catch some Devil May Cry style energy in there, but it still manages to stand on its own. The main trio is easy to like, and the voice cast helps a lot with that. The performances feel natural, fun, and well matched to each character, bringing personality without turning everything into melodrama. I also enjoyed the character backstory, especially the parts tied to Rumi and Gino. Their history adds weight to the plot and gives the movie something to lean on beyond just fight demons, sing songs, look cool. And let's be real, that goofy tiger demon cat creature. It might be the MVP of the entire movie. Every time it's on screen, the movie instantly gets more entertaining. That said, I did have a few issues, and they mostly come down to pacing and emotional payoff. I went into this with high expectations because people were hyping it up hard, and while I had fun, it didn't hit me as deeply as I thought it would. The story introduces interesting themes, but it sometimes rushes through moments that should have landed harder. For example, the whole Han Moon motivation didn't really work for me. I get that it's the core reason the protagonists do what they do, but it felt a bit familiar and not especially compelling. I would have loved more time spent developing the demons, the stakes, and the relationships between the main characters. And the pacing, wow. It moves like it's speedrunning its own plot. Everything happens so fast it almost feels like the movie is sprinting to the next scene before the last one has time to breathe. Near the end, there are big emotional beats, reconciliation, goodbyes, major turning points, that happen so quickly they feel almost automatic. Instead of hitting you in the chest, they pass by like checkboxes. Still, even with those flaws, it's hard to deny how enjoyable it is moment to moment. It's stylish. It's energetic. It's visually impressive. And the music, whether you love K-pop or not, adds a punch that makes the whole thing feel like a high-budget animated concert mixed with supernatural action. So overall, K-pop Demon Hunters is a fun, flashy ride with great animation, strong voice work, and a surprisingly decent story hiding beneath the pop spectacle, even if it doesn't fully take the time to become emotionally unforgettable. Highly recommended. I genuinely didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, but yeah, it's a blast. I had a really fun time with this movie. The plot is genuinely entertaining, the music is ridiculously catchy, and visually it's a feast, bright, stylish, and often straight-up gorgeous to look at. Honestly, I can't imagine this working nearly as well in live action. A big part of the charm comes from the freedom animation gives. It can go louder, weirder, flashier, and more expressive in ways real-world filming just can't pull off. If I'm being honest, it does feel like it's mainly aimed at women, but I don't think that should stop anyone from enjoying it. A guy can absolutely have a great time with it too, unless he's the kind of person who refuses to enjoy anything colorful, pop-heavy, or unapologetically energetic. And to be fair, most of the people I personally know who've watched it have been women. What really stood out to me, though, was the core message. I took the theme as being about community, finding your people and learning to lean on them. It can take ages to discover a group that truly feels like your crowd, but once you do, trust matters. If they're genuinely your family, they'll show up for you even when your baggage is messy or your past is uncomfortable. Keeping everything hidden doesn't just isolate you, it can hurt the people around you, especially if your secret is something that could affect them too. So if this movie shows up on your Netflix feed and it catches your attention, I'd say go for it. Make some popcorn and press play. Chances are you'll come away glad you did, though fair warning, soda pop might move into your brain and refuse to pay rent. This is a super high-energy, colorful, well-constructed film. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I definitely liked it, and the style started to grow on me more as it went along. I'm especially attached to the main trio. At first, I'll admit they looked a bit similar, and yeah, that old "everyone looks the same" stereotype can feel true at a glance, but by the end they felt clearly distinct, each one with their own personality, quirks, and presence. They're exaggerated in a cartoony way, but still surprisingly grounded and specific. I do have mixed feelings about the animation approach itself. The character designs are awesome, but the movement sometimes has this slightly jerky, jittery vibe. My guess is that it's intentional. Either way, solid animated films are often just a great time. Live theater gets one shot. Live action gets a limited number of takes. Animation, though? Animation lets artists obsess over every frame until it's exactly how they want it, and that level of control really shows here. Rewritten movie review script, K-pop Demon Hunters. I finally watched K-pop Demon Hunters, and I honestly get why it's been getting so much attention. This wasn't even remotely on my must-watch list at first. It's not the kind of movie I usually chase down. But after seeing people hype it up everywhere, I had to see what the fuss was about, and yeah. I ended up having a great time. First off, the animation is the main event here. The film looks vibrant and stylish, with a colorful energy that never really fades. The visual design feels packed with intention, little background details, expressive character animation, and a slick sense of motion during action scenes. You can tell the animators put serious effort into making the world pop. It's the kind of movie where you pause for a second and realize how much is happening in every frame. The tone also works surprisingly well. Even when the story brushes up against heavier ideas, identity, pressure, judgment, and self-acceptance, it doesn't get stuck in misery. The movie stays playful and upbeat, and the comedy actually lands more often than you'd expect. The jokes don't ruin the emotional moments, they mostly keep the pacing light and help the story breathe. And then there's the biggest signature of the movie, the music. The songs are ridiculously catchy. They're not just random performances thrown into pad time, most of the time they're tied to the action or the character moments in a way that makes the set pieces hit harder. Some of the fight sequences are genuinely eye candy, and the soundtrack boosts them into replay this scene territory. The main trio, Rumi, Zoe, and Mira, are a huge reason the movie works. They're cool, fun, and easy to like. Their personalities bounce off each other well, and the film makes them feel like a real team instead of three separate characters sharing the screen. I'll put it this way, I'm a guy closing in on 40, and I'd still wear merch from this movie without embarrassment. That's how much I enjoyed their vibe. Now, with all that praise out of the way, I do have some real issues, and they mostly come down to story structure and world building. The demon/human setup has a fun concept, but the world around it feels thin. I know the movie isn't trying to be a dense fantasy epic, but when your story is built around conflict between internal peace and an external, judgmental world, that external pressure needs to feel more developed. Instead, parts of the setting feel like they exist only when the plot needs them. The crowd element is a good example. The movie sometimes portrays people like a chaotic, shifting mob, almost like a single character that flips moods instantly. It can be funny in the moment, but it also clashes with the film's message about individuality and acceptance. The movie wants to say, be yourself, but then it treats the public like a faceless force that's either cheering or turning vicious on a dime. Then there's the pacing. For a movie that isn't short, it still manages to feel like it's rushing. Big events happen quickly, characters make choices without enough build-up, and emotional beats don't always get enough time to sink in. It's not that the story is confusing in a hard-to-follow way. It's more like it moves so fast that it skips the why behind certain actions, so the feelings don't hit as strongly as they could. Some story threads also feel a bit too clean and predictable. The background involving Han Moon and parts of Rumi's family history are presented in a very straightforward way, almost like a simplified explanation instead of a fully lived-in mystery. And the relationship arc involving Jinu, it's not bad, but the direction it takes made the ending feel easier to guess than I wanted. There are also a few details, little lore bits and plot mechanics, that come off messy or underexplained. At times it feels like the movie is more eager to reach the next performance or action highlight than to fully earn the transitions. It's like the characters are sprinting toward the finish line. That said, even with those flaws, I still walked away impressed. The film is creative, visually confident, and just plain fun. It's also a great option for people who want something different from the usual emotional, glossy, family animation formula. Not that those movies are bad, there have been excellent animated films recently, but this one has a sharper edge in style and energy that makes it stand out. So overall, I loved the look, I loved the music, I enjoyed the humor, and I genuinely like the main characters. The story and world building? That's where it needs work. If they make a sequel, and I really hope they do, I'd want one main thing: slow down and strengthen the storytelling. Keep the songs, keep the spectacle, keep the style, but give the plot more breathing room, make the world feel more convincing, and let the emotional moments land properly. Big vocals and flashy scenes are fun, but a truly strong story is what makes people feel something and remember it long after the credits. Still, as it is right now, K-pop Demon Hunters is one of the most surprising animated releases I've seen in a while. It shouldn't work as well as it does on paper, but somehow it pulls it off, and it's absolutely worth watching. K-pop Demon Hunters is the kind of high-concept swing where you'll know immediately if you're on its wavelength. A demon-slaying K-pop girl group protects the world while a rival boy group, also tied to the supernatural, throws both their fame and their mission into chaos. It's ridiculous in the best way, and the movie fully commits to that blend of idol spectacle and folklore-flavored mayhem. One of the biggest wins is how the film connects its concept to its storytelling. Performances aren't just set dressing, they matter. Choreography feels like a weapon, hooks function like incantations, and the pressure of stardom becomes more than an aesthetic, it's part of the conflict. Under all the neon lights and punchy jokes, there's a steady undercurrent about identity, expectations, and the public version of yourself battling the parts you try to bury. The inner demons idea isn't subtle, but it's integrated in a way that feels satisfying rather than lazy. Visually, the animation is a powerhouse. The character designs pop, faces are expressive, and the film knows exactly how to make a crowd, a stage, or a midnight fight scene feel alive. The action is especially strong because it's not just frantic movement for the sake of it, you can tell where everyone is, what the goal is, and how each beat flows into the next. Even when the fights go full throttle, the staging stays readable, which makes the big sequences feel exciting instead of noisy. But the true headliner is the music. For a movie built around K-pop, it would have been a disaster if the songs were just fine, and thankfully, they're anything but. The tracks are sticky, energetic, and varied enough to feel like a real lineup rather than one repeated formula. More importantly, the musical moments actually do work. They push scenes forward, reveal character motivations, and sharpen relationships. It's not just a soundtrack you'd throw on later, though you probably will, it's the engine of the film's momentum. And a huge amount of credit goes to the vocal performers and voice cast for selling both the emotion in the songs and the personality in the dialogue. Character-wise, the group dynamic lands. The friendship between Rumi, Zoe, and Mira feels like the heart of the story, messy at times, supportive when it counts, and believable in how it shifts under pressure. That emotional core pays off hard near the end, the reunion hits with unexpected weight, and it's easy to get misty when the film finally lets the characters sit with what they've been through. Another late moment that genuinely stings is the sequence involving Rumi and Jinwoo. His sacrifice comes in a way that feels earned and bittersweet, not just a cheap twist for drama. The humor matches the movie's "go big or go home" identity. Some jokes are intentionally over the top, and the film leans into cartoon logic without losing the plot. Side characters, especially the little animal companions, the tiger and bird, who communicate purely through vibes, add a lot of charm. Their silent, silly presence is oddly effective comic relief. If there's a weak point, it's that the story framework is fairly familiar. You can often predict the major turns before they arrive, and the film doesn't always surprise you structurally. The pace also moves so quickly that a few earlier scenes feel like they're rushing past their own potential. Some moments could have benefited from an extra breath to really stick. On a smaller note, there are times when the intensity of the singing doesn't fully register in the character's facial performance. It never wrecks a scene, but it occasionally stands out. Also, while the movie delivers action confidently, it's somewhat economical with it, giving you what the story needs and rarely lingering for extra indulgence. That restraint helps keep the runtime tight, but with a concept this wild, a little more show-off energy in a couple spots would have been welcome. Even with those nitpicks, the overall experience is a blast. The animation dazzles, the songs hit hard, and the emotional peaks land when they matter most. If anything, the most frustrating part is that it wraps up while you're still ready to hang out in this world a bit longer. K-pop Demon Hunters may not reinvent the wheel narratively, but it spins that wheel with style, heart, and enough musical firepower to make it absolutely worth watching. Title: K-pop Demon Hunters, Netflix review, rewritten script. Okay, so here's the wild part, I'm not usually into music-heavy movies. Like, if a film starts breaking into songs every 10 minutes, I'm normally the person reaching for the skip button. But K-pop Demon Hunters genuinely caught me off guard, in a good way. This movie is basically a high-energy mashup of action, comedy, and pop performance, with the most absurd-sounding premise that somehow works: a K-pop group fighting demons, using music. It should feel like a gimmick. Instead, it feels like a creative swing that actually lands. The animation and style. First off, the animation is the star. Sony Pictures Animation has been on a serious run lately, and this feels like another reminder that they can deliver original, crowd-pleasing stuff while other studios keep playing it safe. The look is still in the lane of Sony's modern aesthetic, but there's a sharper, fresher electricity to it here, like the visuals are constantly moving to the rhythm of the story. And I loved how expressive everything is: the facial acting, the snappy body language, the kinetic fight choreography. So much character comes through the motion alone. It has that stylized, almost anime meets stop-motion vibe in how it feels, even though it's doing its own thing. The music, yes, even for non-musical people, now the songs. They go way harder than they need to. It's full-on boy band/idol energy, hooky, punchy, and ridiculously easy to get stuck in your head. And the best part is the music doesn't feel stapled on, it actually fits the world, the pacing, and the combat concept. By the time you reach the payoff, the music as a weapon idea stops being goofy and starts feeling kind of awesome. Story, themes, and why it works story-wise, yeah, it's not reinventing the wheel. The film plays with themes you've definitely seen before: identity, pressure, loyalty, authenticity, but the presentation is what makes it click. The concept is so distinct that the familiar beats don't feel as stale, because the movie keeps dressing them in new colors: pop fame, performance as power, and that tug-of-war between art versus industry. And the group dynamic is genuinely fun. The humor lands, the big moments have weight, and there's a solid team chemistry that keeps you invested even when you can predict where certain plot turns are heading. What holds it back? Improvements. That said, it's not flawless. The pacing dips in the middle. There's a stretch where the movie starts stacking extra missions and detours, and you can feel the momentum soften. The villain also gets a little blurry. Their motivation starts drifting into that standard end-of-the-world haze instead of staying personal and sharp. Also, two members of the group feel like they don't get the depth they deserve beyond their surface roles. The rapper with the hidden angle and the younger tech-focused member both feel like they're set up for stronger emotional or story payoffs than what they ultimately receive. And while the finale has spectacle, the last act feels like the most familiar section of the movie. If the script had tighter stakes around the final exorcism and a cleaner narrative thread reinforcing the art versus industry conflict, this could have gone from really fun to top tier. Final thoughts. Still, this movie delivers what it promises. It's colorful, confident, loud in the best way, and honestly just a great watch, especially for audiences who want heroic representation with style and swagger. As a piece of pop fantasy comfort entertainment, it absolutely hits. With a bit more tightening and sharper character follow-through, it could have been a straight-up knockout. So yeah, if you've got Netflix, put K-pop Demon Hunters on your list. Even if you're like me and usually don't vibe with musical movies, this one might surprise you. Rewritten movie recap script, with light review, intro, upbeat, fast hook. What if the biggest K-pop stars on the planet weren't just performers, but secret demon hunters? Today's recap is K-pop Demon Hunters, Netflix, 2025, an animated movie that mixes idol culture, supernatural action, and a full-on musical war for humanity's souls. Quick disclaimer, heads up, spoilers ahead. Also, personal bias warning, I'm not really a K-pop fan. I understand why people love it, but the super polished, bubblegum perfection vibe isn't usually my lane. Setup, the world and the rule. In this universe, demons don't just haunt people, they harvest them. Their goal is simple: steal human souls and keep humanity weak, distracted, and easy to control. But long ago, some humans pushed back in a strange and powerful way: music. A line of musical warriors emerged, fighters whose performances weren't just entertainment, but weapons. The heroes, HUNTR/X, fast forward to the present day, and that legacy survives in the most unexpected form: a K-pop girl group named HUNTR/X. By day, they're global superstars. Stadium lights, perfect choreography, screaming fans, the whole deal. By night, they're out there doing something the crowd has no idea about: hunting demons in secret. The group is led by Rumi, alongside Mira and Zoe, and at first the movie sells this concept really well. For a solid chunk early on, I was genuinely having fun. The energy is strong, the visuals pop, and the premise is creative enough to keep you locked in. The problem, Rumi's voice. Then the story drops its big complication: Rumi starts losing her voice. And in a world where music is literally part of your power, that's terrifying. It's not just a career problem, it's a survival problem. If she can't sing, she can't fight at full strength, and the demons sense weakness. The villains fight fire with fire. The demons decide they're done losing to a girl group, so they adapt. Instead of attacking head-on, they try something smarter: they build a rival act. Enter the Saja Boys, a demon boy band engineered to weaponize popularity. Their mission isn't just to top charts. It's to steal HUNTR/X's fans, drain that devotion, and swing control of humanity back into demon hands. So now the battlefield isn't only dark alleyways and hidden lairs, it's the stage, the spotlight, and the attention economy. Middle, pop rivalry becomes literal warfare. As HUNTR/X battles both demons and doubt, the Saja Boys rise fast. They're charismatic, polished, and suspiciously perfect, which, of course, is the point. The movie leans hard into the idea that fandom can be powerful, even dangerous, when something evil is steering it. That theme is clear, and honestly it works, even if it feels familiar. The believe in yourself/believe in your friends/protect the people who support you message is solid, but not exactly new territory. A few story nitpicks, quick, non-spoiler-ish. I did notice a couple of moments that felt unintentionally odd. Like when the movie implies a song is happening across different locations in a way that makes you wonder, wait, were the fans hearing this the whole time? And there's also the classic musical movie stretch where a new track drops and the crowd somehow feels ready to sing along instantly. It didn't ruin anything, but it did pull me out for a second. Style plus audio, what worked for me? One thing I'll give the movie without hesitation: the animation is vibrant. It's colorful, glossy, and expressive. The art style carries a lot of the fun, especially during performance scenes. Also, the voice acting is strong, even though I did keep thinking about how funny it is that a K-pop-centered story is primarily in English. It's not a deal-breaker, just something that stood out. The honest reaction, the musical angle. Here's where my personal taste kicks in. I enjoyed the movie a lot in the beginning, and then, as the musical focus ramped up, I started to lose interest. That's not the movie's fault, it's just not the genre of music I usually listen to, and some tracks edged into a bit much for me. If you love K-pop or musical-heavy animated films, you'll probably have a way better time than I did in the later half. Wrap up, who it's for. Overall, K-pop Demon Hunters is definitely watchable: creative concept, flashy animation, and a fun supernatural twist on idol culture. For me, it was strongest in the first stretch, then got a little repetitive once the musical rivalry took over. But I can absolutely see a younger audience, or anyone already into K-pop fandom energy, loving this. I watched it with my daughter, and that's honestly the perfect setting for it: bright, adventurous, easy to follow, and packed with style. Credits tag, quick factual closer: the film is directed by Chris Applehands and Maggie Kong, and features voice work including Arden Cho, Mei Hong, Ji Young Yu, and Ahn Hyo-seop. OUTRO, optional CTA: if you've seen it, tell me, did the songs elevate the movie for you, or did you start zoning out like I did? K-pop Demon Hunters, 2025, review, rewritten script. K-pop Demon Hunters is one of those movies where not every idea lands perfectly, but when it's firing on all cylinders, it's seriously impressive. The animation is the biggest reason to hit play. It's loud, bold, colorful, and constantly moving in a way that makes the film feel alive. The action scenes especially go hard, and the demon designs are genuinely cool, and sometimes even a little unsettling in the best way. On visuals and spectacle alone, it's basically a 10/10 experience. What surprised me most is how much this movie deserved a theatrical release. For something that ended up on Netflix, it looks like it was built for the biggest screen possible. And yes, Netflix originals can be wildly inconsistent, especially the ones that don't come through festivals first. But every now and then, one shows up that reminds you why streaming can still deliver something special. This is one of those rare wins. Stylistically, it feels like Sony Pictures Animation playing in a new sandbox. Imagine that high-energy, experimental animation approach, but filtered through anime, or even anime, influences instead of comic book roots. The premise and marketing don't fully sell just how strong the final product is. It's fast, vibrant, and clearly made with a ton of confidence. Even if you're not the target audience, it's hard not to admire how committed it is to its vibe. That said, the story is a bit uneven. The central romance gives off major teen-focused vibes, almost like a supernatural love story you'd expect from something Twilight adjacent. That's not automatically a bad thing, it just makes it very clear who this movie is aiming for. And honestly, I respect that. It knows exactly who it wants to hype up, especially younger K-pop fans, and it leans into that without being embarrassed. The music is where I was more mixed. Some songs are catchy and add to the energy, but a few of them feel like they run longer than they need to. When that happens, the pacing dips a bit, and the movie loses some momentum that the action and visuals work so hard to build. On the character side, the voice cast is a real highlight. The three main women have great chemistry, and their friendship feels believable, like they actually enjoy being around each other, not just teammates written to trade lines. Their whole dynamic, from performing to fighting, is the heart of the movie. The rival male group is also a fun addition, since the story gets to play with the Battle of the Bands energy alongside the demon hunting stakes, and that competition adds a nice layer of tension and humor. In terms of tone, it's playful and intense in equal measure. It's not trying to be subtle, it's stylish, dramatic, and proudly over the top, and that's part of the charm. The plot does fall into some familiar beats and feels a little generic in places, but it also uses that familiarity to keep things accessible while it experiments with presentation, culture, and style. Final thoughts: K-pop Demon Hunters isn't flawless, but it's absolutely worth watching. It's energetic, visually stunning, and way better than you'd expect if you only judged it by the title or trailer. If you're a big K-pop fan, especially if you're the audience it's clearly built for, this could easily be an all-timer. If you're not, it's still a wildly entertaining visual feast that's hard not to enjoy on some level. Rewritten movie review script: K-pop Demon Hunters. So I finally watched K-pop Demon Hunters, and I'll be honest, it wasn't something I had circled on my must-watch list. This happened the way a lot of family movie nights happen: my kids wanted it, we hit play, and I expected to half pay attention. But it actually won me over more than I thought it would. What works? First off, the action is a blast. The fight scenes don't feel stiff or lazy. They move fast, they're punchy, and they've got that animated chaos energy that's genuinely fun to watch. It's the kind of action that keeps the pace lively even when the story takes a predictable turn. And yes, this movie absolutely feels built to become a bigger thing. You can tell it's designed like the start of a larger universe. If this turns into a Netflix franchise with sequels, I wouldn't be surprised at all. There's plenty of room to expand the lore, add new rivals, raise the stakes, and explore more of the Demon Hunter history. The music, my mixed section. Now let's talk about the big selling point, the songs. For the intended audience, the music is going to hit hard. The tracks are polished, catchy, and clearly made to be replayed. But for me personally, I'm not exactly the target listener. It's not that I can't stand K-pop, more like this specific style isn't what I naturally put on. That said, if you're into idol groups and arena pop energy, you'll probably have a great time. Fans of groups like BTS and other major acts are likely going to eat this up. Also, funny moment, I started thinking, wait, why are these songs kind of working on me? And then I realized I was watching at 1.5x speed, which probably made everything feel extra snappy and hooky. Once I noticed, I couldn't unnotice it. Animation and style visually, it's super satisfying. The animation is expressive, the faces are hilarious when they need to be, and the whole movie has that "the animators were having fun" vibe. You can feel the personality in the motion and reactions. People are going to compare it to that modern, stylish animated wave, Spider-Verse style influence, bold choices, playful pacing, and while I get the comparison, I'll still say I prefer those movies more. But this is still a strong effort and way better looking than I expected. The story in plain terms at its core, this is basically a Battle of the Bands movie, just swapped from sports trophies or talent competitions into a K-pop idol showdown. The demon hunting is more like the extra flavor on top than the main meal. And the villains? They're not exactly nightmare fuel. The evil side is more cartoony than terrifying, which makes this feel more like a fun fantasy ride than anything intense. What doesn't work, the biggest weak link for me, is the romance subplot. It plays out exactly like you'd predict: familiar beats, familiar tension, familiar resolution. It's not unbearable, it's just the part that feels the most template. There's also a point where the movie's message gets a bit messy. It wants to say a few different things at once, and not all of them land cleanly. And by the end, it leaves a couple of threads hanging in a way that feels less like mysterious sequel hook and more like, wait, are we done? The family test: here's the strongest endorsement I can give: my kids were immediately hooked. One started humming before the credits were even finished. The other asked if we could watch it again. And yes, I did sit through it a second time because my daughter requested a rewatch. I expected that second round to feel like homework, but honestly, I didn't hate it. The humor landed better the second time, and there are little visual gags that are easy to miss on the first watch, like that ridiculous slapstick moment with the big cat messing around and trying to fix something like it's resetting reality. That bit actually got a real laugh out of me. Overall verdict: K-pop Demon Hunters is a colorful, energetic, surprisingly well-made animated movie, especially if you like fantasy action mixed with pop idol competition vibes. It's not perfect, and it might run a little longer than it needs to, but it's fun, catchy, and visually sharp. If you're into K-pop, you'll probably love it. If you're not, you might still end up enjoying it anyway, especially if you're watching with kids. And if this gets sequels? I can see it working, because the world they set up has a lot more they could do with it. Original review script, spoiler-free, K-pop Demon Hunters, 2025, so I finally watched K-pop Demon Hunters, after hearing, you have to see it, from basically everyone. And honestly, I get why it's blowing up. It's the kind of animated movie that feels like it was engineered to be replayed, partly because it looks incredible, and partly because the music keeps living in your head long after the credits. The premise is gloriously simple: chart-topping K-pop idols by day, demon hunters by night. And the film commits to that concept with zero embarrassment, in the best way. Instead of treating K-pop culture like a joke or a gimmick, it leans in with real affection. The vibe isn't, look at this weird trend, it's, this is cool, and we know why people love it. What works visually, this is another big flex from modern animation. Every fight scene is staged like a performance, flashy lighting, punchy movement, and edits that feel like a concert video colliding with an action movie. Even when the story is doing something you can predict, the movie is still fun to watch because it's constantly feeding you striking images and clever transitions. And the songs? They don't just show up to fill time. Each track feels like it's placed with intent, either pushing the plot, sharpening the character dynamics, or underlining the theme. The soundtrack is ridiculously catchy, but it also feels connected to what the characters are going through, which is what separates good songs from good musical storytelling. The voice cast brings a ton of energy too. The core trio feels believable as friends, supportive, messy, and occasionally dorky in a way that makes them easy to root for. The supporting voices match the film's heightened tone, so nobody feels like they wandered in from a totally different movie. What doesn't under all that style, though, the story is familiar. It's basically a well-worn young misfits must unite, overcome self-doubt, and save everyone structure. It's not bad, but it rarely surprises you. You can see major beats coming from a mile away. And while the action looks spectacular, I didn't always feel it. The choreography is flashy, but the danger doesn't consistently land. When a movie is this visually confident, you kind of want the fights to tighten the knot in your stomach a bit more pressure, more consequences, more oh no moments. Here, it's often more like, wow, that's cool, rather than wait, are they actually going to lose? That said, there's a smart layer running underneath. The film occasionally turns the camera back on its own world with some sharp, funny commentary. Adults will catch the meta jokes and the little industry side eyes that kids will glide right past. Who this is for if you're into K-pop, this is basically a love letter with a lightsaber. If you're into animation craft, it's a feast. If you're a family looking for something different, it's a strong pick. In my house, it landed exactly in that sweet spot. The older kid locked onto the humor and the self-aware bits, while the younger one was just fully hypnotized by the demon-slaying spectacle. And honestly, I can see teen audiences absolutely claiming this as their movie. Final take: K-pop Demon Hunters isn't reinventing storytelling, but it doesn't need to. Its top priority is entertainment, and it delivers. The visuals are bold, the music hits hard, the characters are lovable, and the whole thing moves with confidence. If you can accept a predictable plot in exchange for style, energy, and sincerity, you'll have a really good time. Verdict: a vibrant, music-powered crowd-pleaser with genuine heart, held back only by a story you've probably seen before. I want to start by saying I didn't hate this movie. I actually enjoyed parts of it quite a bit. But I also can't pretend it felt especially groundbreaking. At times, it played like what you'd get if an anime-styled production tackled a glossy, toybox pop fantasy in the spirit of a Barbie-type band film. The core idea is genuinely strong, though, and it even made me imagine a completely different version of the same story. Personally, I would have been fascinated by a live-action adaptation where the music felt less like chart pop and more like something epic and sacred. Think operatic vocals or powerful chanting, the kind of sound that forces an emotional reaction. Something along the lines of that haunting beauty you get from Simple Song No. 3 from Youth, 2015. Visually and tonally, I could picture it in a Highlander-style world, only with sharper storytelling and bigger production polish. And honestly, the film already echoes that sort of structure anyway, a conflict stretching across eras and eventually colliding in the modern day. Where it lost me a bit was the way it leans hard into the anime and K-pop wave. I get why it does, it's clearly designed for a younger, current audience, but for me those choices can drift into too silly territory. The exaggerated reaction faces, the rapid-fire dialogue, and the overall hyper-energy sometimes pulled me out of the story. And while I fully support anyone's right to identify however they choose, the movie's girls versus boys framing made me feel like the boys should have been more traditionally masculine, if only to make the contrast clearer. Of course, maybe that discomfort is part of the point, challenging older expectations like mine. Early on, I also couldn't decide whether the filmmakers were mocking the disposable factory-line pop world or simply profiting from it. By the end, I'd say it's a mix of both, some satire, some cash-in. Still, once the narrative kicks into gear, I found myself getting more engaged. The story becomes more interesting when Huntrix, the girl group, begins to uncover that the Saja boys aren't what they seem, they're demons with the power to weaken the boundaries between worlds. At the same time, Rumi, voiced by Arden Cho, has her own struggles running underneath everything. As those threads tighten, the film becomes easier to invest in. One standout for me was Jinoo, on Hyoseop, and especially that big blue tiger, an element that's exactly why I want to like anime more than I usually do. It's cute, weird, charming, and imaginative in a way that feels instantly iconic. That said, I noticed a few technical hiccups. There were moments where it felt like the vocal performance switched suddenly, like the dialogue track ends and the singing track begins, and the voice change is noticeable enough to remind you it's been stitched together. And while the ending is satisfying in the way audiences generally like, I also found the redemptive wrap-up pretty easy to predict. What made this review tough to write is that, in many ways, the film does what it set out to do. It's energetic, colorful, and tailored to the audience it's aimed at, and it clearly works for them. I can completely understand why my friend's 8-year-old loves it. But from a critic's point of view, I tend to look for something bolder, something that feels truly fresh and deserving of a personal, best of the best, spot. If anything, this one felt balanced. Maybe that's my inner Libra talking. It's also hard to ignore the movie's larger cultural footprint. This Netflix #1 Sony animated hit, built around 3 young Korean K-pop performers using music as a weapon against demons, has obviously struck a chord. The details inspired by everyday Korean life, the voice work, the musical performances, and the overall production come together in a way that's earned big praise from viewers and plenty of professional admiration too. One interesting layer is how it separates performance roles, similar to classic musicals like My Fair Lady, 1964, where acting and singing weren't always done by the same people. That kind of split raises questions about how we credit and evaluate performances, especially when chart success and awards attention enter the picture. And looking ahead, it's only going to get more complicated as AI becomes more integrated into filmmaking. Who gets the credit when acting, singing, dancing, and even presence can be blended or enhanced in ways audiences may not even notice? It starts to feel like comparing athletes across different conditions, like arguing who's best when one plays on grass, another on clay, another on hard court. The best depends on what you're measuring and what environment shaped the result. And ultimately, that's the real takeaway: whatever you think of the movie creatively, what you're watching is still the final product of an enormous collaborative machine: direction, casting, acting, vocal performance, animation, editing, cinematography, design, storyboarding, programming, sound work, and music production, all merging into one finished piece. So yeah, not revolutionary for me, sometimes a bit goofy, but still a concept with real potential, and a film that clearly knows exactly who it's trying to entertain. When I first saw the official trailer for K-pop Demon Hunters, I thought it looked fun, but honestly, my expectations weren't sky high. Still, the movie became such a hot topic online that I eventually gave in and watched it, mostly because the premise sounded too entertaining to ignore. And I'm glad I did, because what I got was a colorful, high-energy fantasy musical with action that's way more polished than I expected. At its core, the concept is instantly appealing. Rumi, Mira, and Zoe are beloved idols in a group called Hunters, adored by fans who have no idea that once night falls, these performers shift into a completely different role: demon hunters. The twist gets even better when demons decide to fight fame with fame, posing as a rival boy band to charm the public, loosen society's grip, and pave the way for their leader's darker plan. It's the kind of over-the-top idea that could have collapsed into chaos, but the film commits to it with confidence, and that commitment is a big part of why it works. One of the biggest strengths is the music. The songs, and the vocal performances, feel tied to the characters rather than pasted in as decoration. E.g., Rumi, Audrey Nuna, Mira, and Ray Ami, Zoe, bring real personality to their roles, and the tracks often land at the right moments to reinforce emotion, build momentum, or punctuate